Hey, I wanted to let you know real quick that Friday Night Arcade shirts are available now on Amazon.com in all sorts of varieties. Help support your favorite D-list YouTube channel and pick up one today through the link in the description. And thank you so much for watching. This week, gamers around the world will be celebrating the highly anticipated release of the latest installment of God of War on the PlayStation 4. Seems like a good excuse to dust off the original and see if it still holds up today, and also reminisce about how this game actually took me a year to finally beat. I'll explain about that and more this week on Friday Night Arcade. God of War. Man, this takes me back. God of War was released in March of 2005 for the Sony PlayStation 2. It's a cinematic action-adventure game with flawless hack-and-slash combat, puzzle solving, an amazing soundtrack, gorgeous locations, and over-the-top monster battles nestled in with a gripping story that keeps you hooked until the end.
10 years, Athena! I have faithfully served the gods for 10 years. When will you relieve me of these nightmares?
The story is a tale of vengeance set against an epic backdrop of Greek mythology. You play as Kratos, a Spartan warrior who's kind of a jerk, maybe? When you first start out, Kratos is actually about to commit suicide by throwing himself off a cliff, lamenting the gods of Olympus for abandoning him. The story then flashes back to the weeks leading up to this event, and that's where you come in. Most of the story is dribbled out in flashbacks between Kratos' troubled past to the present day, with Kratos being tasked by the gods to defeat Ares, the god of war. Ares is this giant Nicolas Cage-looking dude who's laying waste to Athens. In order for a mortal like Kratos to defeat a god such as Ares, he's going to have to find a special weapon called Pandora's Box. Kratos' journey takes you across a vast array of beautiful locations, mostly based on Greek mythology, but with real-world counterparts embedded as well. Mount Olympus, ancient temples, the city of Athens, the Aegean Sea, deserts, and even a cursed temple that's strapped to the back of a giant that's been wandering the desert for years. Everything looks incredible. Seriously, it all just looks awesome. I think you could take a still frame at any point and it would look freaking epic. And this was back when they didn't always get the camera angle right in these third-person action games. For the most part, that's all good here. There are a few parts where it's a little awkward getting your jumps just right, but for the most part it's fine. Also stairs. No, really, this game has a lot of stairs. If you need sweeping shots of the hero valiantly charging up a barrage of towering staircases, this is the game for you. The combat is also just perfect. It really is. I'm not over-exaggerating. Kratos' main weapon is the Blades of Chaos. These blades that are permanently chained to his arms. You swing them around in a dizzying array of offense, and although it looks like I'm sort of an expert here, it's pretty forgiving for all skill levels. There are plenty of combos and special attacks to learn, but honestly, even if you're not that good, you can get by a good chunk of the game just mashing buttons. I will say though that it's helpful to learn and utilize as many of the new skills and attacks as you can throughout the game, because they typically give you an advantage in specific situations. With a bit of practice, you can rattle off some wicked combos. You can also level up some of your special skills. You collect orbs by killing monsters or finding treasure chests that can be used to purchase skill upgrades, so there's incentive to keep getting more powerful as you progress. Several of the attacks are based on mythology as well. If you defeat Medusa, you can use her ability to turn people into stone. You also learn how to throw Zeus's lightning bolts. The Blades of Chaos also lend themselves perfectly to the PS2 controls. You can kinda steer your attacks and swing them around using the left stick, while using the right analog stick to evade attacks. Everything just feels right, and you'll be fairly comfortable within just a few minutes of practice. Make no mistake though, this game is a gluttony of violence, which could be a turnoff for some folks. I felt like the violence all fit within the context of the story though, unlike some games where it's just violence for violence sake. I feel like this is a good game to just take out some anger on. You can just run around smashing barrels and flower pots if you want. Even something as simple as opening a heavy door requires you to get plumb mean. Along with the violence, there's also some nudity. It's not totally over the top, but it's there. What the? Is that just how Kratos says hi? Anyway, back to the combat. Along the way, you'll do battle with hordes of monsters, big and small. Minotaurs, harpies, wraiths, Medusa, not to mention just ridiculous boss fights. The Hydra battle is still just as jaw-dropping today as it was over a decade ago. And that's only the first boss. Various characters from Greek mythology are all a part of the story as well, from Aphrodite to Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, even the main villain Ares. In Greek mythology, Ares was considered to be the god of war, one of 12 Olympians and son of Zeus. Ares was said to be the personification of bloodlust and caused death and destruction anywhere he went. It's pretty cool that they were able to tie in some real Greek mythology in with the story. Aside from the fierce combat, there's plenty of intricate puzzles to solve along the way as well. Sometimes it's pretty straightforward, like moving giant boxes and platforms around, but occasionally it's far more complex, like when you're in the Pandora's box stage. The entire structure of the building is a puzzle, and it's a bit of a mind bender to figure it all out. The game also rewards taking your time and exploring the areas a little more. Take this area for instance. You can use this giant crossbow to smash through the wall here and reveal a secret area with some orbs. That's great, we found them, now how do we get over there to them? You'll have to keep exploring the area a little bit further to figure out how to get around. This sort of thing isn't always necessary to complete the game, but it rewards players for being thorough, and it also gives you a chance to catch your breath between some of the more frantic action sequences. I feel like the developers struck just the right balance between these puzzle elements and the intense action. It's just the right mix of both without ever getting boring or repetitive. And in the background, underscoring all of this, is a stellar full orchestra soundtrack that could easily be in any Hollywood blockbuster. I realize it sounds like I'm gushing on about this game, but the soundtrack really is superb, constantly evoking whatever emotion the story necessitates. Voice acting is also on point here. Whether Kratos is speaking or just grunting angrily, it all sounds natural and you buy into his character. Kratos was voiced by T.C. Carson, who also voiced Mace Windu in several of the Star Wars video games and cartoons. The elderly narrator was voiced by Linda Hunt, an established longtime film actress, and her voice just gives everything a highly nuanced sense of legitimacy.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it would finally come to an end.
The soundtrack and voiceover have virtually no effect on the actual gameplay, but it just gives everything a large-scale, big-budget feel to it that you usually didn't really see much in video games from that era. So yeah, true story, it turns out it took me nearly a year to beat this game. I first played this game at a friend's house as a rental. I still remember that initial experience of playing this game the first time. We all just sat there for hours, passing the controller back and forth, taking turns, and it was just as interesting to watch someone else play as it was to play through yourself. We didn't have time to complete it though, so the next weekend I rented it for myself so I could play the whole thing through from the beginning on my own. I made it all the way through and acquired Pandora's box. Then when the cutscene of Ares and Athens started to play, the game just froze. I cleaned off the disc and reloaded, same thing. No matter what I tried, the game just kept freezing at that exact moment, and I never got to face the God of War in the final battle. Stupid rental stores, why can't people take better care of their games? The game was still pretty much new at the time too, and I couldn't afford to just run out and buy it. So I just had to settle on the fact that, well, that was probably the final battle, and I probably would have beaten Ares, and that was probably the end of it, right? Kratos gets his revenge, yada yada yada. It wasn't until about a year later that I stumbled across God of War in a bargain bin repackaged as a PS2 Greatest Hits release. I thought, you know what, screw it. I owe it to myself to see the end of this game, so I plunked down a few bucks and replayed the whole thing from the start. That's how good this story was. I was willing to buy it a year later just to finally see the ending. This time, when I got Pandora's box and initiated what I thought would be the final battle, much to my surprise, Ares freaking kills Kratos with a giant stake. There's a whole extra level after you die where you have to escape the fiery depths of hell. This blew my mind. Even after a year, this game was holding back one last surprise, and the game's true ending was well worth it, even if I had to wait a year to see it all. So there it is, that's God of War. The original God of War and the experience of playing it through the first time is still one of my all-time favorite gaming memories, and I hope the new PS4 entry is just as much fun for fans of the series old and new. The original though is one of those bucket list games that every gamer should play through at least once. What did you think? Did you play God of War when it first came out? And what was that experience like? What did you think of the sequels? Hey, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.